Bob, I feel like I'm a self. I feel like I'm an integrated personality that is a whole thing that I have self-reference to, and I know where I am, I know my history, and I feel like I'm a unity. I know there's a lot of illusion in that, but how much of a self is real, and what can we learn about the self from our dreams?
It's really interesting if you look at this concept of self in a dream, because if you push people to watch their dreams very carefully, at first they're very confident that their selves, their normal waking selves, are there in their dreams, unblemished. And as you look more and more closely, it gets more and more confusing. So I would say that the self we have in our dreams, first of all, is a pale shadow of ourself. And second of all, that we really are unaware of how impoverished it is. So how is it impoverished? First of all, sometimes, not always, but sometimes we're not even ourselves. I think it's clear that in some dreams, someone will be a different character than themselves. Although they're still aware that it's them being that character, there's a dualism that develops, maybe not unlike what you see in hypnosis or in multiple personalities, where there's sort of these different parts that are kind of talking to each other, but not quite. So you can be someone else. It's often unclear how old you are. If you ask a person, pay attention to how old you are in your dream. They have no reference to it. They can't do that. You don't have access in your dreams to what we call episodic memories, to memories of the events, the things that have happened in your life. You have lots of knowledge about who you are and what you do and all of that. But for example, it never bothers you that you're in Paris and 30 seconds ago you were in your bed. I mean, but even if you look at people's dreams and where they say, oh, that was about that thing, and that scene in my dream was about this in waking, you never replay the waking event in sleep. And so the self who's dreaming, I would argue, is a different person than the one who's awake. Let me give you an example. A not uncommon dream is the dream where you become romantically or sexually involved with a coworker who you, in fact, have absolutely no interest in at all. You might even have an active, repulsion towards the person. And the classic reaction when you wake up is to go, yuck, yuck, I can't believe that my subconscious, there's no way. But in your dream, that's not how you feel. In your dream, you might have the thought, this is really weird. I don't know why I'm in bed with this woman. I don't think I particularly like her. But it's a very naive self who's in the dream. And I think the naivete comes because we don't have our episodic memories. We don't have access to who we are in waking life. And so it maybe the dreaming self is sort of a platonic extraction, like a platonic form of who we are in real life, because we tend to have the same hopes and desires. We generally have the same knowledge about who we are, but we don't really know what year it is or what month. Maybe we're like a dense amnesic who's had hippocampal damage and has no memories of anything that's happened to him in the last 10 years. They think they're the selves of 10 years ago while they're still the selves of now. So I think maybe what it does is it points out how both that self-reflective awareness that disappears in dreaming and that access to episodic memories that disappears in dreaming, both of which happen in REM sleep, and I think are probably critical for the kind of memory processing and dreaming that we evolved to do in REM sleep, that it wants us to be a different self.
So with those deficits that you see in dreaming, where you have this impoverished self, what does that then tell us about the real self and what we require to be a self when we see an impoverished self, and what has to happen to reconstruct ourselves the way we are in the waking state?
Well, I think the waking state, the real self, the functional self, if you will, critically needs those two facilities: the ability to reflect and direct our thoughts and our actions, and the ability to access our history, because those are the things that we need to direct action. So insofar as, as consciousness is involved in controlling decisions around behaviors, the self is core to that. The self is what needs to be able to make those decisions based on its understanding of who we have been in the past, that control who we are going to be in the future. And you want that as an integrated whole, even though it can flit. I mean, we think of ourselves as an integrated, coherent person, but I have to tell you that the person I am when I feel like I've really lost my train of thought and I'm starting to babble and all these people are watching me and I don't think I'm making any sense, that self accesses an entirely different history of who I have been, because I'm thinking of all the other times I've made a fool of myself, than when I'm in full effective control. So, I don't know how many selves there are inside me, but I know the self I am now, talking with you about selves and memory and consciousness, is not the same self who plays with my 7-year-old kid and continually loses at Uno. So each of those takes a slight twist on the past that we reconstruct to define who we are. And that's what then allows us to act differently in different types of circumstances. So the dreaming self is just one of those many places that the self can go. And I think it's one that's going to a real what-if place that is just exploring possibilities without wanting to get locked into any one of those who I normally am when I'm awake.